According to the extraterrestrials. Chapter 8. The Destruction of Atlantis.
There are many fascinating legends and myths surrounding Atlantis, a huge island that sank into the ocean, causing the destruction of a great empire that existed thousands of years ago. These stories are found in Plato's detailed account known as the Socratic Dialogues. What do the Plejaran, human beings from space, who have been in contact with Billy Meyer for several decades, know about Atlantis? Did such a civilization really exist? What were they like? Was it suddenly destroyed? Did it truly sink into the sea? What could have caused such a cataclysm? What the Plejaran tell us is surprising, and at the same time frightening, because of the great parallelism of violent events that are currently occurring on Earth. We know from Plato's story, or myth, that there once existed a huge island, the size of a continent, beyond the Pillars of Hercules. He refers to what existed in the Atlantic Ocean, beyond the Strait of Gibraltar. Plato described it as a flourishing civilization, located in a fertile and beautiful place. The Atlantean continent was rich and lush with vegetation. Giant fauna like elephants roamed its plains, and nature provided everything necessary to sustain its large population. The central city of Atlantis, located in this continent, was built forming 3 great circles of land, enclosing 3 great circles of water, with canals to access its central citadel, where the central palace rested on a hill. From this palace ruled Atlas, a demigod, who was not the Titan Atlas known in Greek mythology, but a human being great in wisdom, who was effectively responsible for creating several cities on the earth. Atlas was the supreme ruler of all these created island cities and the other kingdoms, located in what today are known as Libya and Egypt. Atlantis, along with the other city kingdoms, maintained a military alliance, where each contributed warriors and equipment for war, if needed. Plato tells us how the kingdom of Atlantis, with its warriors, perhaps influenced by the god of war, Ares, advanced eastward, towards Greece, to confront Athens and wage war. But the warriors of Athens, who were very brave, managed to repel the Atlantean attack. Plato ultimately tells us that Atlantis, with all its splendor, was destroyed in a single night, after a great cataclysm that caused the ocean to advance like a tsunami towards it, and bury it and all of its inhabitants. As a result of this great disaster, a great waste of mud was left in the sea, which made the waters unnavigable for many years. For several centuries, this legend told by Plato has awakened the imagination and inspired many people, leading to the creation of other myths and countless tales. Many even went as far as to go in search of the lost civilization of Atlantis, in various places on Earth. But how accurate was Plato's story? Well, our extraterrestrial friends, the Plejaran, have described the existence of Atlantis in great detail and very precisely, including the causes and events that ultimately led to its complete, total, and absolute destruction. We can all find this Plejaran account about Atlantis in several of the contact reports. In these, Semyaza, a wise extraterrestrial human woman from the Plejaran group, gave Billy Meyer several details, clarifying the issue of Atlantis, which she confirmed did in fact exist. The story about Atlantis is of extraterrestrial origin in nature, and resulted from a group of more advanced space-traveling humans that came to Earth in the very distant past. The Earth humans at the time declared these space travelers as gods, or demigods if they were born from the union of these space travelers with Earth humans. The story goes as follows. About 170,000 years ago, humans from Beta Centauri returned to Earth. You see, they had been on our planet before, but due to wars and disasters, they had to leave, hoping that Earth would one day again be a suitable place to live. Among them lived an extraterrestrial man named Atlant, who with the help of some wise scientists, set out to build several cities on various continents of the Earth. It's possible that Plato's Atlas refers to Atlant. Under the leadership of Atlant, the continent of Atlantis was expanded and made habitable. At the same time, Muras, cousin of Atlantis' wife, built the gigantic city of Mu, which like Atlantis, also found its origin in very early times, around 31,000 BC. Greater Atlantis was located where the Azores Islands are today, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Mu, on the other hand, was located far away, in a region where today's Gobi Desert exists. Another smaller city also existed, and it was called Smaller Atlantis, located in what today we call Santorini, in the Mediterranean. Whilst the smaller Atlantis survived the events that caused the destruction of Greater Atlantis, it was nevertheless, 6,000 years later, destroyed by an eruption of the Santorini volcano. About 103,000 years ago, another group of space-traveling human beings found their way here, also arriving from Beta Centauri. This group was commanded by a ruse, known as the Barbarian, for his very violent nature. Sadly, Aruz had resentment towards his companions already established on Earth, and violently conquered a kingdom in the north of Earth, Hyperborea, and chose to settle there. As the years followed after the arrival of Aruz, his descendants dedicated themselves to creating intrigues between the two great civilizations of Atlantis and Mu. Interestingly, the name Aruz bears a resemblance to Ares, the mythical Greek god of war. At that time, these space humans had advanced technology for space travel. They used ships that flew around the Earth, from one continent to another, and possessed highly sophisticated weaponry. Mu scientists dedicated themselves to space travel in the solar system to research of asteroids, eventually developing a terrifying technology that was later used in warfare. More than 91,000 years later, about 11,500 years ago, the pernicious intrigues brought about by the descendants of Aruz against Atlantis and Mu caused a conflict between the two to come to a head. As a result, the inhabitants of both cities annihilate themselves in a barbaric war. Here is a detailed description that Semyasa makes about the war between Mu and Atlantis, in the Contact Report number 60, of July 8, 1976, and it is interesting and frightening.
At their time, the war powers of Mu and Atlantis were of horrendous might and size and equipped with the highest technical achievements. So, Greater Atlantis alone had at its disposal an army of 4,830,000 men, which was equipped with small combat beam ships. Furthermore, the government of Atlantis commanded a giant fleet of 123,000 units of single-man destroyers, miniature beam ships for close Earth combat. In addition, there existed another 16,431 Eliminator units, miniature beam ships, which through the effects of heat, were able to totally eliminate all material within fractions of a second. Finally, they were equipped also with 24,230 overkill beamers, each of which required 10 men to operate and were installed in mid-range beam ships. To this tremendous might Mu was inferior, which however did not make it less dangerous for the greater Atlanteans, because the Mu scientists had likewise developed very dangerous weapons, which in many ways were even more dangerous and more destructive than everything of the Atlanteans altogether. The scientists of Mu had in fact discovered powers, which made it possible for them to convert entire small planets into all-destroying space bombs. The best and the most suitable scientists of Mu were charged with finding a suitable planetoid which could be used as a deadly and annihilating missile against Atlantis. When Atlantis undertook the attack, the producers of the death missile were informed within a few seconds, by means of hyperwave impulses, about the oncoming events and were charged with allowing the death missile to take off. A few seconds after receiving the command, on the side of the planetoid facing away from the Earth, 1,000 suns appeared to race into the dark space, and with gigantic force the monster started moving. Very quickly the speed of the messenger of death increased, steered by scientists controlling the monster, who were sitting on the planetoid completing their task and thereby were doomed to die. In the meantime on the Earth, the Atlanteans eliminated the city of Mu and leveled it. Whoever had not fled into the satellite cities thousands of meters deep underground or into space, perished in the totally eliminating rays of the Atlanteans, and nothing bore witness anymore to their former existence. The victorious Atlanteans, however, returned to their gigantic island kingdom and celebrated their victory achieved over Mu in a true delirium of joy. However, their joy did not last long, because they had barely begun their festivities when messages came thick and fast in regard to the danger rushing towards them through space. Only a few high government officials and scientists were still able to clear out and flee with their spaceships into space, before the catastrophe was unleashed over Atlantis and made it sink into the sea. The ones left behind and doomed to die saw the disaster racing towards them, high in the sky and far in the northwest above the sea and the far continent. As if out of nothing, a dark celestial body suddenly appeared, which advanced at frantic speed with its far side blasting off blinding light. The Colossus came rushing in quite low and in a few seconds turned into a giant. First only visible like a small shooting star, in a few seconds it turned to a gigantic size with a fiery tail. Fascinated and transfixed, saucer-eyed from fright, the human beings stared towards the monster, which so completely silently sped towards them. Then, however, suddenly gave an unbearable howling sound, as it plunged into and rubbed against the first levels of the atmosphere of the Earth. 2 seconds later the planetoid began to glow like a supernova and created a heat of more than 340,000 degrees. In a split second, vast areas of country burnt to smoldering ash, when the enormous heat fell down from the speeding giant. Then the space bomb suddenly exploded at less than 172 kilometers altitude, and transformed into many thousands of small and larger meteorites, which like small atomic bombs, were catapulted to Earth. And with devastating impact destroyed everything that got in the way, and which was in the areas of impact and shock waves. Through the tremendous explosion, the whole Earth was shaken, and the thunder of the explosion rolled around the entire globe. The planet was shaken badly and many volcanoes erupted out of it. 2 large parts of the exploding planetoid crashed like titanic fists into the Atlantic, and pierced through the hard crust of the Earth on the bottom of the ocean. It was as if the world was going under, because the power of impact of the debris was greater than many hydrogen bombs, such as you insanely possess today. Deep in the ocean, the Earth's crust was torn apart, and the way opened for the boiling hot and glowing magma of the inner Earth, which now viscously poured out. The seawater began to bubble and to boil, and the vaporizing masses of water shot up into the atmosphere, up to 35,000 meters high. Through all of this happening, the wild ocean was thrown up into a gigantic tsunami wave, which surged forward with frantic speed and a height of 2,300 meters, pulled along everything and simply let entire countries sink into the water, or at least destroyed whatever was in its path. The island empire of Atlantis, however, sank within a few minutes, in the raging waters of the Atlantic, without even leaving one single surviving life form behind. The capital city, which was built like a beam ship, was torn into several pieces and sank with the foundation. This is how the event with Atlantis and Mu unfolded about 9,500 years before today's calendar.
Semyaza tells us that of Atlantis, today only the highest mountain peaks remain. These are the Azores Islands, as we know them today. She also explains that some of the survivors of Mu managed to take refuge in hidden cities deep under the Gobi Desert and the Himalayas. There we find Agartha, a place currently inhabited by extraterrestrial human beings, who are more advanced than us in many aspects. These human beings, along with other groups of humans of extraterrestrial origin who are also hiding on Earth, are called the foreigners by the Plagiarin. This will be a more detailed topic of discussion in future videos. So stay tuned. By studying the events that led to the war between Atlantis and Mu, we realize how consequences of an excessive greed for power, which combined with high technology, only leads to one inevitable result: self-destruction. How many times must we Earth humans seek to destroy our achievements and the planet, before we finally learn that we are all interconnected? That we depend on each other, and that we are all part of one big human family? What should it take for us to wake up and raise our consciousness to a higher state, to allow us to live in harmony with each other, and in harmony with nature?